All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. Still have some folks joining us here, which is fantastic. So let me cover a little bit of housekeeping here before we get started. So for the webinar today, this will be recorded. So we'll send out the recording afterwards. We'll also send out a copy of our slides from today. And we'll also share at the very end, we have a little kind of cheat sheet that we're going to share as well that gives a breakdown of all the organizations that are part of our panel here, and kind of just so you can see different things about each of ours and compare them all on one sheet. So it's a really handy cheat sheet that we'll send that to you for free here at the end of the webinar today. And so I still see we got plenty of folks joining us. It's great. I'm going to go ahead while we're waiting, and I am going to launch our poll. We have a couple questions that we would love for y'all to answer here today. So I just launched those. So as y'all are logging in here, before we get started, I'd love for you to just answer this poll question that we just launched. So the first question is, how confident are you that you'll be able to fully fund your adoption? And then the second question is, what's the main barrier when it comes to fundraising for your adoption? Or the main barrier that you anticipate? All right, we're getting some great feedback so far. We've had about half of you answer. So if you haven't answered yet, I'm gonna give you a few more seconds. So if you're just logging in, welcome to our webinar here. We've launched a poll to kick things off, so we'd love to hear from you. That poll has two questions if you want to answer those real quick. All right, we're at 75%. Getting close. All right, and we're still have people joining too. So welcome everyone. For those of you that are joining us, we're so glad that you set aside your lunchtime today for our webinar on funding your adoption in 2026. So before we get started, just one last time, just a couple of pieces of housekeeping. We're going to send a recording of the webinar today. So keep an eye out for that after it's over. We'll also send a copy of these slides as well as an adoption funding cheat sheet that has a breakdown of all the organizations that are part of our panel today. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll share the link to that at the very end. So you got to stick around till the very end. And we have a poll question here that I'm going to go ahead and close, where we've asked two questions. And let's take a look. So the first question was, how confident are you that you'll be able to fully fund your adoption? And so we can see a good majority there say somewhat confident. So sounds like definitely maybe a little bit of room to learn a few things or explore new opportunities. So that's good to hear. All right, our second question. So what's the main barrier when it comes to fundraising for your adoption? So 90, you mentioned we feel the pressure to pay for it ourselves because we can afford it. Big chunk of y'all said we don't feel comfortable asking friends and family for money. So we'll let the panel speak to that here in a little bit. That's a very common challenge that families have voiced. So we'd love to talk about that. And then some of y'all mentioned we've tried applying for grants and loans, but haven't qualified. Some we don't have the time, resources, community support, or tried other fundraisers. And then some said no substantial barriers. So that's good to hear too. All right, very interesting. Let me close out of this. All right. Well, again, thank you all so much for spending your lunchtime with us here today. We have an all-star panel here. Uh, this group of folks, we have done this panel in person at many conferences throughout the years, all across the country. And so last year we got to talking about, well, why not just do the panel virtually and do a webinar like this? Because we know that there's families out there that may not be able to attend some of those conferences in person. So this is our group, and they're going to walk through together as we talk about their ministries and how they can support you in your adoption journey. So I hope that after today, we hope that you leave learning at least one new piece of information, or just if that confidence level can increase just a tad. But our grand hope is that you fully believe, if you don't already, that you truly can fully fund your adoption through knowing what resources are available. So we're going to talk about grants and loans. We're going to touch on the adoption tax credit a little bit, cover fundraisers. And then we also know that when your child comes home, that's just the start of the journey, right? So there are post-adoption needs that can arise. And so all of our organizations can partner with you when it comes to post-adoption in various ways as well. So we're going to talk about what those are. So before we start anywhere, we have to start with this question. All of us get this all the time in our line of work. If you have adopted before, or if you're in the process, I'm sure you're hearing from your friends, your family, the big question: why is private adoption, so expensive? And I always like to encourage families that this is a great opportunity when you're starting to get into funding to have a good answer to this question, right? Uh, but we first need to really see, is this an issue? Is cost a barrier? And we can see that there have been studies done. NCFA, they did a study in 2022. They surveyed families, and over half of them did say that yes, the cost was a significant barrier for them in their adoption. Our friends over at CAFO, they had polled families as well. And one of the top answers for those that had just considered adoption, the main barrier was, or the reason that they couldn't move forward, is because it was too expensive. So we know that it's a barrier, and so that's why we're here to help. We don't want finances to ever be the reason that a child doesn't have a forever family. So when you're going to answer this question, when people ask, we're here in Nashville. So it's been, Ice City the past week. Our poor Kate is actually still without power. So please say a prayer for her. But when it comes time to answer this question, someone's asking you, hey, why is adoption so expensive? Well, the first option is you could kind of look like this. You could maybe not really have a good answer as to where those costs come from. It's not really going to instill much confidence in that person you're speaking with, right? But that conversation, that's an opportunity to turn someone from a skeptic into an advocate so that they can actually help you, right? They can be a part of your fundraiser. They can be on the lookout for grants that you may qualify for, or loans and different things like that. So our friends over at Lifeline Children's Services, they shared with us, this is just kind of a breakdown of where some of these different costs come from. There's the application and home study fees, support throughout the whole adoption process through, if one caseworker, if not more, helping you walk through and train you on what to expect throughout the process, support for the expectant mother, travel expenses, legal fees, agency administrative costs. So I would encourage you that if you are still researching and trying to decide which agency that you're going to move forward with, Adoption is not cheap. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. You are paying them a significant amount of money to be working, and you're going to be working with them for a significant amount of time. It's honestly, it's no different than if you're shopping for a new car, right? You're going to do your research. You really want to have a good handle on where this funding is going and what kind of support am I going to have throughout the process. So our encouragement would be to really ask those questions, really understand where is the money truly going. Um, so at the same time, you don't, when someone is asking you, well, how much does it cost? We don't want to overdo it, right? This is literally what's happening. We have people that are using flamethrowers to. I'm not sure about Nashville, but I've heard people using flamethrowers to melt the ice. Isn't that wild? So we don't want to go crazy, but if you can come back with a good answer to why is that adoption is expensive, okay, well here's an understanding of what all goes into those costs. You've turned someone from a skeptic into an advocate. In Nashville on the grocery shelves, they've been a little sparse the past week. It's pretty wild if you live in the South, but that's how it goes down here. So lastly, I'll just say that um, adoption has unavoidable parts to it, right? There's paperwork, there is visits with your caseworker, there are challenges and things that are going to happen that are unavoidable. But the finances side is a very avoidable challenge if you know where to look. And I would really encourage you when if you may be thinking, well, we can afford to pay for an option on our own. Think about your family, think about the financial position that you could be putting yourselves in because you may not know what is coming down the road. And if there's an opportunity for you to fundraise now, and there are ministries and organizations out there that want to help you fundraise, take advantage of that because you don't want to put that financial strain on your marriage. We've seen from I'm sure you all know that finances continue to be one of the top struggles and strains that can be put on a marriage here. And this is just some data on those trends. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel from ABBA Fund, Lifesong for Orphans, Pathways for Little Feet, and Show Hope. So I believe we are going to start with Tammy Burkett from ABBA Fund. So Tammy, take it away. Tell us about ABBA Fund.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. ABBA Fund, these are the things you want me to talk about, right, Jared? ABBA Fund has been doing adoption interest-free loans, and we've been in business since about 2004. And a few of the things that families can participate in is you can do fundraising through us, and you can um, apply to receive an interest-free loan. You do have to be home study approved in order to qualify for an interest-free loan, but you don't have to be home study approved if you want to start fundraising with us. You can fundraise for those first initial fees, and yeah, that's the way that works. The loan application, we say, takes about 4 to 6 weeks. We are able most of the time to do expedited applications if we need to. And then for fundraising, I can typically get a family set up within a matter of days, if not within the same week, once we check everything out and talk to your the different things that are going on in your application, and we do a review of that. As far as disbursements, we pay directly to the third party. Um, Typically. And then there are times, though, like travel related costs, that we will reimburse a family for. I always ask my families to work directly with me on those types of grants that are going out. All of our fundraising, as you fundraise and you request money to go pay for your adoption expenses, then that money is going to go out in the form of a grant. And so, as those go out, if there's extenuating circumstances, then I'll definitely work with you as much as I can. We do have church partnerships across the United States, and many of them provide direct grants or matching grants. So we have a clause in our application that when you're checking the box on whether or not you want to fundraise or do the interest free loan, there's a box there. If you don't know if you have if your church is a church partner, then that will email us and we'll let you know if you qualify for a straight grant or a matching grant. Otherwise, we do not have matching grant options. ABBA Fund doesn't. And I noticed that Wendy had sent in a message a while ago that she works with angel adoptions, and she's concerned because a lot of us only work with 501c3 organizations like adoption agencies. ABBA Fund is not one of those, but there's nothing wrong with that. We want you to go to a Christian-based organization if you can, but everybody has their own preference on the agencies they want to use.
All right, Tammy. And would you also like to share on the um oh, never mind. I was thinking of something else.
Okay, no
Tammy,
problem. I probably did forget something. I like to talk, but sometimes I forget. So,
all righty. Next up, we've got Rich Metcalf from Lifesong.
Thanks, Jared, and thank you all. It's great seeing over 100 participants here considering adoption. Each of us on this panel are excited that God's calling you into adoption, and each of us, all of us, want to help. So thank you for being here to listen and learn. Lifesong's been around since 2002, helping thousands of families raise money for their adoptions. You can see on the screen, direct and matching grants, interest-free loans, the ranges there. Has an online application for all of that. You can just jump on a website, find the application, and apply online. Typically, the applications are reviewed within 2 to 4 weeks, and you'll hear something back about a grant or a loan, depending on what you've applied for, within about a month, sometimes quicker. As Tammy shared, we all want to expedite and do the best we can when there's a real reason. So share your story, share what's going on. Let us understand well. You need to be home study approved. And then once we get to the other end, when you need the money, we'll disperse either to providers directly or reimburse to the families for unreimbursed receipts. And similar to what Tammy shared, we love to serve your churches too and help them help you and your community. I think there's a slide for post-adopt. Jared, do you want to go with that too? Yep. Once your children are home, we know, and we all know, there's plenty of need to help bring healing. So Lifesong will serve you there too, with grants, direct and matching, depending on the need for counseling for your child, for your family, for yourselves. Couples often need some help as they get down the journey. Things like regular just talk therapy can be helpful, but other interventions like EMDR, neurofeedback, maybe even residential care. Whether it's post-adopt or pre-adopt, we pay out every Tuesday and Thursday and have a very simple online process to get those funds dispersed. So I would encourage you to keep paying attention, keep learning, and be ready for, is it Kate next? I don't know.
Thanks, Rich. And I remembered Tammy, what you reminded me of that I was going to say. So we have the Q&A section there in Zoom. So for y'all, feel free to type your questions into the Q&A there, and we'll answer as many of them as we can here throughout the session. All right, next up, we have Eric Fridge from Pathways.
Hey everyone, much like Lifesong and ABBA Fund, Pathways has been around almost 20 years now. We've been providing interest-free loans. Our average is about $10,000 that we do on interest-free loans. You must be home study approved, and we typically will approve those and award those interest-free loans within 1 to 2 weeks. We can expedite those as well. We do have some of those folks that just find out about us and they're in emergency funding. They're about to travel and we can get those to you quicker as well. And so that's never a problem. We do fund folks directly to families, and that's 30 days before travel or before you go pick up your child. And each one of those interest-free loans are customized for each family. So, in other words, we review each family's application, just kind of where their family is at, how many children, kind of your income, and then we customize a repayment for you that is reasonable and gives you a good timeline that you can pay that back to us at a reasonable time that does not put an extra burden on your family. And so that's kind of what we do with interest-free loans. And as we have matching grants, we disperse grants as well.
Thanks, Eric. And Elijah was asking, what are the typical loan terms for the loan options?
Yeah, for Pathways, our loan terms, typically our average loans are paid back in 3 to 4, sometimes 5 years. We often understand, life happens sometimes. So with some of our families, there might be a job loss or a medical incident, and so there are times that certain circumstances, folks will call us and tell us about their situation, and we will put their loan on pause and give them a little time to breathe so that they can make sure that their loan does not, again, create extra burden on their family. Again, it's a covenant loan, and so it's a promise by each of our adoptive families to pay that back to us over time. But that's kind of how those loans work. Pathways also does post-adoption grants as well. Do we have a slide there? There we go. So post-adoption support also, we walk along with families all along the journey. And so that means from the time that your child comes home, this goes for adoptive families as well as foster families. And these families don't have to have gotten a loan or an adoption grant from us. This just goes for post-adoption support for really any adoptive family, but this goes for counseling, for therapy, for marriage counseling, and it's not just for the adoptive child, but it's also for bio kids, because we know that sometimes when an adoptive child comes into that home, it can really change the dynamic of a family. And so we also offer those counseling grants, not just to the adoptive child, but to the bio children, as well as mom and dad also. Pathways also offers scholarships and grants for conferences and retreats, really anything that helps strengthen and helps our adoptive families thrive. We want to make sure and provide you to make sure you have the right resources to do that.
Great, thanks, Eric. And I see a few folks are asking similar questions. So we're gonna have Kate share from Show Hope and then kind of open up questions to the four of them to all answer together. All right, Kate.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Kate Johnson. I'm Senior Manager of Programs here at Show Hope, and our organization has been around for about 23 years, and adoption aid grants were the starting point for Show Hope and continue to be a cornerstone program of our work. We provide direct grants to families adopting both through intercountry adoption and through domestic adoption. And those grants are averaging kind of ranging between $8,000 to $12,000 right now. In terms of your eligibility timeline, you do have to be home study approved to start that process. And we do require that your placement agency be a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization. We review applications quarterly, so we have 4 grant review periods throughout the year, and those are listed on the slide: March, June, September, and December. And our application is fully online. You can go to showhope.org and see all the eligibility details, information about what you need to gather prior to starting the process. In terms of disbursement, we disperse directly to the agency, and so the timelines for that for domestic, we can disperse once your placement has occurred, and for intercountry, we can disperse once either your I-800 form has been approved or your placement travel is booked, whichever ends up happening first for you. So I think we can go to post-adoption. I think there's a slide. Great. So we have two different kind of areas for our post-adoption. We have medical care grants, and this is really a wide range of medical needs. We've got a few listed, such as like physical and occupational therapy, speech therapy, if there's surgeries or hearing devices, vision aid. Lots of different things fall into this category, but these are truly medical needs for kiddos. And we hope that this is encouraging on the front end too, because like Jared said, adoption is a journey. It does not end once you bring your child home. It's really just beginning. And so we hope that it's an encouragement that there's hope and there's also financial help on the back end once you've brought your child home. Just to kind of alleviate any fears of the unknown going into the process. And then we also do have a mental health grant that we offer through referral through specific selected providers that we work with. And so it covers some of the same therapies you've heard talked about today.
All right. Thanks so much, Kate.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna open up to everyone now, because like I said, we've had a few different questions come in. Some have asked the same question. Um, is can you apply to multiple organizations? Uh, and Rich, I saw you had answered. Great answer, Rich. Rich had just said that yes, you're welcome to apply to all of us. We actually refer families to each other pretty often if we find that the needs are pretty great. So we would just ask, that you're transparent with us if you've received funding from another organization. Just feel free to mention that when you're applying. But we really, back to what I mentioned earlier, we don't want finances to be a strain on your family. That's the least thing you need to worry about right now. And so if we're able to help, we're more than happy to do it and refer families to each other.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jared. I think it's really important that the families here, we are not competing with each other to try and grab families. We are wanting to help families bring children home, and we want to do that together. So apply, but as Jared said, be open, be honest, tell us what you're doing. Um, we want to work together to help all of you.
And I saw a couple folks were asking, in terms of kind of qualifications for families, would y'all want to speak to what that looks like in terms of are there kind of income limits? Are there statements of faith that are asked to agree with, things like that?
For ABBA Fund, you will definitely, as you go through the application process, there will be questions that you're going to ask, and we'll put our statement of faith out there, and we want you to agree with that. Of course, there's going to be some essay type questions, if you will, that talks about your adoption testimony and where you are spiritually. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I know we want that child that's going to be in your home to be raised in a loving, nurturing Christian environment and be surrounded by a community of believers so that they can ultimately know who Abba Father is.
Thanks, Tammy. Eric?
Yeah, similar to that for Pathways, we're going to have a statement of faith along with your application. We ask for a reference letter from someone in your church is always helpful just to, for folks to know who you are. Because again, this is a covenant loan. It's a trust on our part that you're going to pay that money back to us. And so we like to have a second voice speaking into your adoption. And then uh, trying to think the other thing I was going to tell you. Um, that's it for me.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, Jared, I'll add to that. Applications of paperwork is part of adoption, but most of that is on computer anymore. So we just encourage you to save, copy, and paste.
Mm-hmm.
Really helpful as you fill out applications. A lot of similar questions. And if you've written something out really clearly and really well for Show Hope, save it, copy and paste it to the rest of us.
Yeah.
As you fill out
Mhm.
the applications, it'll save you a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great point, Rich. Thank you. All right, y'all have some great questions. Please continue to send those in. We'll have more Q&A time here at the end. And if we don't get to your question here today too, or if it's specific for a certain ministry, then we'll be reaching out to y'all individually afterwards to answer as well. All right. So in addition to our fine folks here, I also just wanted to share, we have this big long list of other grants and loans we'd encourage you to consider and look into. If you can't tell, the resources are certainly not short out there. It's just knowing where to look. And so we've compiled this list together. So again, I'll send you these slides after we're done. And would love for you to look into these. Another thing I wanted to mention is employer benefits, right? So that's something that oftentimes people may not think of, but there are more and more employers that are stepping up their game, and they are offering some type. It could be just a one-time grant, matching grant, some type of employer benefit or adoption benefit for families. And if your employer doesn't offer something, you could be the first. You could be the first one. There's no harm in asking. Maybe is there a way you can approach your employer, HR department? A great resource is the Dave Thomas Foundation. They help other companies with setting up employer benefits, adoption benefits. So you could be the first one. But that's a great resource to look into and not overlook. Now, let's talk about fundraising. On the fundraising side, we're gonna have some fun. I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly because I wanted to share about both hands, but wanted to also point out some other resources out there. So when we're talking with families, or when we're having them apply with us here at Both Hands to do a project, we always want to understand what's their goal, how much do they need to raise funds for, and then we really want to encourage them to prioritize fundraisers that are higher yielding, and those that if it can be low, well, and then thinking through what is the time, effort, what's the overall budget of this fundraiser going to be, what's the cost, is it really worth it? And then lastly, are you passionate about it? So let's say if you want to do a pickleball tournament because you love pickleball, go for it. But if you absolutely hate pickleball, how can you expect to get other people excited about doing your fundraising tournament with you if you don't even like it, right? So find something that you're passionate about and think about your community too, where you live, what is something that's going to resonate with people. If there's a huge pickleball presence, then great, go for it. If you're out in the country and that's not the thing to do, probably pick something else. On the crowdfunding side, from what I've seen and our team has seen, crowdfunding is more of the higher yielding options out there. So Tammy already spoke to what ABBA Fund does, and Rich spoke to at Lifesong. Adopt Together is a very popular one. I'm sure that you all have seen. GoFundMe, a lot of folks will use, and then Both Hands, which we'll share more about. So things just to consider is when you're crowdfunding, are those gifts to that entity going to be tax deductible? So with all these organizations, except for GoFundMe, they would be. But then there can also be certain tax benefits on the GoFundMe side for that family. So you have to kind of weigh those pros and cons there. But from what we've seen is, especially with the rise in donor advised funds, so if someone gives through a Fidelity Charitable, a Schwab, something like that, that has to go to a 501c3. And so if as the rise in DAFs happens, in my opinion, it's a great idea to have an option for donors to give to help fund your adoption and do the fundraising that is a tax deductible donation. And then lastly, think about online processing fees. All of our organizations, fees are 100% covered. With other like GoFundMe, some other ones out there, they are not. I believe with Adopt Together, I'd have to double check. I want to say that some of them are covered as well. There's also fundraising events, right? I won't go through all of these, but this gives you an idea. I mentioned earlier, if you love spaghetti, you do a spaghetti dinner. Basketball, pickleball, lots of different things. There's also merchandise sales. This is a great book that came out a while back by our friend Julie Gum. She was featured on Dave Ramsey. She wrote a book, You Can Adopt Without Debt. It's available on Amazon. I'd encourage you to go pick it up. She has some great ideas in there. But as you can see, there's no shortage of solutions and options out there. But the one that obviously I'm a little biased, but I'm most excited to share about is Both Hands. And so at Both Hands, we help families to fundraise for adoptions by recruiting a team of volunteers that serve a widow for a day. And so I'm going to pass it over to JT Olson. JT is our founder, because I think to really understand how it all works, really helps to hear him share the story of how it all started. So JT, take it away.
Thank you, Jared. And I tell you, what comes to my mind is these Zoom calls, all these people on it, we need a laugh track because some of the pictures you put up were just amazing. I love the guy with the bread and the milk, making the milk sandwiches. That was well done. And there ought to be a roar track too, because I've known these men and women, these organizations for the last 20, 25 years. And when they get up and speak, and any one of them, there is a crowd, there's a family, there's adoptive kids. Take Bristol Motor Speedway, 150,000, multiply times 10. That's the roar that would happen when these families hear about these organizations that you've heard speak today. So it seems quiet, but in my heart, it's just, wow. Well done, you guys. And I hope you've instilled some confidence in these men and women that are on the phone, on the line right now. Both Hands is it's pretty cool. Whenever I tell people we help families raise money for adoptions and we do it by serving a widow, they always look at me real nice and polite and everything, but you can tell there's this glaze in their eye that they have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. And the easiest way to understand Both Hands, I think, is to understand how it happened. I was doing a golf tournament for Bethany Christian Services about the turn of the century. And it was one of those tournaments where you send letters out ahead of time and ask people to sponsor you, much like a 5K race or sponsoring thing. If you get that, you'll understand this. So I send my letters out, and I had a buddy I was in a Bible study with. He sends my letter back to me, doesn't include a check, just took a magic marker and he scribbled on my letter. He said, JT, if you told me you were working on a widow's house, I might sponsor you, but you're just golfing. Nice cause, but not my money. And it hurt my feelings a little bit, but at the same time, I thought, man, that's a pretty good idea. And I called him a couple of days later and we talked about it and laughed, and dude still didn't give me any money. But I mean, the idea just never left me. Whenever I saw a 5K or a golf tournament after that, I kept thinking, if all those people were working on a widow's house, would it be better? Honestly, I didn't have the orphan part figured out. A couple years later, I'm in church when a good friend of mine, hadn't seen him in a couple months. I said, hey, Don, what's up? And he looked at me and said, we're adopting 4 kids from Moldova. And he's already got 3 kids at home. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, I went on a mission trip with Sweet Sleep, delivering beds to orphanages, fell in love with little boy George, came back, started the process. And in the process, we find out George has 3 siblings. And Don looked at me and he said, we're not going to break up the siblings. And at that point, it took me back to when I was 12 years old, living on a farm in northeastern Iowa. There was 5 of us kids. And I remember one weekend, my mom and dad left to celebrate their 16th wedding anniversary. And us kids were kind of farmed out to different places. And I remember Saturday night being brought home because mom and dad were coming home, and the neighbor dropped me and one of my brothers off, and I was dirty. I'd played in the barn all day, so I had to go in the basement to change. My brother went in the front door, but I remember sitting in our basement on this chair, bending over, unlacing my boots, and my brother came down the stairs. I just looked up at him. I said, "Are mom and dad home?" And he looked at me and he said, "Mom and dad are dead." And I said, "What?" He said, "Mom and dad are dead. They were killed in a car accident an hour ago." And he turned around and walked upstairs. I mean, he was in shock. He was just coming down to tell his little brother. But I remember that moment. I remember hitting that cold cement floor in our basement and crying all by myself for about 10 minutes. I know what it's like to be an orphan, and I know what it's like to wonder what's going to happen to us. Who's going to take care of us? Will we stay together? Will we be able to stay on the farm? You know, will we stay together? I know what it's like to be an orphan. I know what's the wonder like. What's life going to be like? Never seeing my mom and dad again this side of heaven. But I also know what it's like to be rescued, because 3 months before this accident, my mom and dad and my aunt and uncle, my mom's sister and her husband, they changed their wills that if anything would happen to one of them, the other family would take them. My aunt and uncle lived in a really nice suburb of Milwaukee, much different than a rural farm in northeastern Iowa. They were 33 years old. They had 3 kids. They took all 5 of us. I know what it's like to have someone come in and say, "We got you." It may not be pretty, but we got you. So back to the hallway in church. When Don says he's not going to break up the siblings, I'm the just right guy to say that to, because I'm not going to sit there and say, "Are you sure?" I'm sitting there cheering him on, saying, "Way to go, Don." And then by then we had adopted, our 5th child is adopted, and I said, "How much is this going to cost?" And he looked at me and said, "They're telling us 70 or 80,000. I said, "Do you got any idea how you're going to do this?" He said, "No." I said, "I think I got an idea." So Don and we found a widow in Nashville who needed help. We got most of the supplies donated, and we recruited a team, about 15 people. We all sent letters out to everyone we knew saying just what my buddy suggested. "Would you sponsor me for the day while I work on this widow's house? All the money I raise is going to go towards this adoption." And we spent the day working on Miss Lucille's house. It was a glorious day. I'll never forget it. About 35 people showed up because word got out and people loved it. Everyone had a blast. And when it was over, we had raised a little over 71,000. And I was blown away. It was just, I had no idea what to expect. But about a year later, another friend of mine had asked, "Hey, I heard you did, Don, would you help me?" So we did another project in 2008. That was April. And in August by 2008, we had started Both Hands, because I told my wife, I said, I think I'm supposed to do this. So we left our company and we started Both Hands. Now, here's the part I love. Now we've done 1,611 projects in 46 states. 1,780 kids are no longer orphans, and 1,843 widows have been served. And we've raised, in the process, $24.6 million. And 100% of that money goes to the cause. Both Hands doesn't take anything out for our operations. We just decided to set up that way. Along with these nonprofits, we wanted to be one of the most irresistible nonprofits in America. Widows and orphans, and we don't take any money out. So that's the story of Both Hands. And to me, it's a story of God can take something that's hard and painful and turn it into something that's beautiful. Everyone's got a story. Every one of you has a story. And somewhere along the line, God's going to use that story to produce something awesome.
Amen. Thanks so much, JT. And I'm going to share just a little bit more how on the Both Hands side. And then, JT, I'd love if you, and then maybe the rest of the panel too, our poll in the beginning, one of the concerns or challenges around just folks feeling uncomfortable with asking their friends and family,
I saw that. I want to talk about it.
Yeah. So let's I'll give you all a little chance to, think through that and circle back after I touch on both hands a little bit more here. Okay, so with both hands, as JT mentioned, we help families with fundraising where they organize a service project. They gather a team of their friends and family. They find a widow in their community to serve. And our team at Both Hands, we coach you through the entire project process. We set up a donation page for you on our website. We have a letter that's pre-made for you already with all that we can add your information to. And you would use that to send out your letters. We are seeing an average for families of $23,000 raised per project. I'll repeat that again, $23,000 raised per project. If we wanted to do the math, which I've done on this call last time, if we added all of our organizations together, you're looking at around $70,000 to $80,000. That should more than cover your adoption right there. In addition, we're offering $3,000 matching grants if you apply and complete your project. I believe right now we're doing, you need to complete your project by the first half of the year here. And so when you raise $3,000, then Both Hands would match that with an additional $3,000. We offer a $1,000 supply grant. So we've had some families or folks have asked, well, where, the cost for stamps and letter printing and supplies for the widow's home. Well, we've had generous donors that we now have a grant fund where we can offer a $1,000 supply grant to cover those costs for you. And then there's no fees. When a donor gives online, they have the option to cover the fee for the processing fee for their gift. But if the donor doesn't cover the fee, Both Hands, we have a fund where we cover that fee to ensure that 100% of the donor's gift goes towards your adoption. Our process for applying, it's very similar. You go into our website. You must be home study approved. We review applications in typically 1 to 2 weeks. We like to get you rolling as quickly as we can. And then for planning your project, we recommend give yourself maybe 6 to 8 weeks to work with our team. You would set a date for your project, and then our team works with you from there with getting everything set up. We have documents and helpful videos. You have access to Amanda and Amy and JT and me on our team. Any questions that you have throughout the whole process, any donations or checks that are given or made, those come directly to us, and we take care of entering those, and those go towards your Both Hands account. And then one thing that is pretty unique is we can actually reimburse you for qualified adoption expenses that you've already paid. So I saw that question came in a bit from a couple of different people. So if you've already made some initial payments or you paid for your home study up front, and then you raise $23,000, $25,000, $30,000 with Both Hands, then yeah, we can reimburse you for any of those expenses. We just need proof of payment and proof of receipt. We can also pay providers directly. So if you have an open invoice with your agency, then we can make that payment for you. You do not need to be matched in order for us to make that payment. And we can make payments up to even a few months after the child is home or the adoption is finalized, because we know that it can sometimes take some time to get those final payments or reimbursements to go through. So that's Both Hands. And then we also, on the post-adoption side, we've started doing post-adoption projects as well for medical, mental health, therapeutic treatments. And then if a church wanted to do a project or another ministry wanted to do a project with us, or really any group out there, we've done projects with companies, college groups, church small groups. They can raise funds, and it can go towards your adoption, or it can go towards adoption grants for the rest of our families. So if you're looking for a way to just empower the body of Christ to get out there and live out James 1:27 and serving both the orphan and the widow, we'd love for you to apply with Both Hands, and we take you through the journey. And I believe we even have some Both Hands families on the call here. We got Amanda and Tina and Crystal, and so it's amazing what our families they love going through the whole thing. And it's not just about how much they raise, but it's an opportunity to actually get out and serve together as a family and that community that they build. around them and supports them throughout their adoption. So now the big thing is letters, sending out letters when you do a both hands project. And so when it comes to that fundraising side or just fundraising in general, going back to that question y'all asked in the beginning or the poll, I'm uncomfortable, some of you said, with asking my friends and family to fundraise. So panel, what would be your recommendations, your wisdom for folks that may be feeling that?
My thoughts are, you go ahead, Eric.
I was going to do a personal story. When we adopted 20 years ago, we didn't have the money to adopt, and we received a grant from Show Hope, which was a great blessing for our family. But we also did fundraising within our church, and we had a number of folks that were part of our church family that stepped up. And years later, one of the couples that gave us a few $1,000s for our adoption came back and he told me why that they gave. And he said, when we were raising our children, we had always wanted to adopt, but never took that step. And by the time that, their kids were grown, they thought they were too old and just the window had passed for them. And then when we came along and we were adopting, they just felt like, hey, here's an opportunity where we can participate in adoption. And we've known those folks for a long time now, and they have been a part of our family for a long time. And he actually told me, thank you for giving us the opportunity for being a part of our daughter's adoption and just being able to watch her grow over the years, and they felt like they had a hand and a part of our family, and we've considered them friends like family. And they just have been so gracious to us, just saying thank you for giving us the opportunity to give and bless your family through that gift. So I would always tell you, don't be afraid to ask, because some people, that's their way of just living into adoption for some folks that maybe not are called to it personally.
That's exactly not, I don't have that same story, but that's exactly what I was going to say. Not everyone is called to adopt, but there, God may be leading somebody that you don't even know that wants to be a part of your adoption story and wants to be a part of adoption, but they just don't want to go through the adoption process. So let them. The more you share with what's going on, it's ultimately at the end of the day up to them if they do. But I would say if you don't put it out there, you don't know.
And I think if you don't give someone a chance, what you're doing is you're taking away from them the experience of the joy of giving. Because we're all calling, if these are people who know the Bible, if they know James 1:27, widows and orphans, if they know anything about about Christ, they know that there's more joy in giving than receiving. And we've done this for 18 years. I have made thousands of calls. I'm not exaggerating, because I call people who give to projects. And over the last 18 years, I know I've made thousands of calls, a lot of voicemails, but I've talked to people. And all the time you hear people when they say, you know why I gave? And they say, I gave because I don't feel called to adopt, but I know we're all called to support adoption. And they say, I can't go work in the widow's house, but I can support them. And I remember when we were adopting too, same thing with Eric. Someone just came up to us in the middle, gave us a check for $250, and those were their words. We're not called to adopt, but we want to help people who are adopting. And if you don't let people know that, if they don't know you're adopting, how are they going to know? And a personal story from the very first project I remember, because in our minds as feeble humans, we had this build up this thing about, oh, what are they going to think when I get our letter? Oh, what are they going to think when they get our letter? Oh no, what are they going to think of me? Well, let me tell you, most people don't think about you. They think about themselves, and they're not that concerned about it. But I remember that first project, I sent out 64 letters, and I remember I called a few of them, but one guy I called, he's a friend. I hadn't talked to him in 5 years. And I said, hey, Hack. He said, JT. He said, I bet you're calling about that letter, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. He said, well, I was going to give you 250, but since you called, I'm going to give you 500. And my point is that I had this built up in my mind of what people were thinking, but the reality was totally different. And just don't build we build a lot of bridges in life that we never have to cross. And you don't have to think that way. Give people the chance. And most of the time, if they say yes, they're going to be excited. If they say no, they're going to throw it in and they're going to go back to thinking about the bills and the kids and what's on the stove.
Yeah, that's great. JT, love it. I think something else to think about too is, yes, adoption is expensive, and that may be one of the reasons you feel that it's hard to ask, ashamed to ask because of the cost. But you can learn the reasons for the cost of adoption. It's not your fault. So you don't need to feel like you need to take any blame for that. There are 160 million orphans in the world that need a family. There are babies born in America every day that need a family, and that's not your fault. All you're doing is being obedient to the Lord to say, yes, I'm going to go forward in adoption.
Great point.
So you don't need to worry about the cost or the fact that there are children that need families. You're offering an invitation for people to come and be a part of what God's called you to do. And you've heard that from everybody here saying, give them the opportunity. They can say no. That's the worst they can do. Move on. Pray for them. But move on. God's got it covered. If he's called you to adopt, he's going to find the time and the money to cover all that's needed to prepare you to be the parents that your child needs, whether that child's born yet or not. Whatever those needs are, God's sufficient. He's going to use you for it. So change your perspective a little bit, invite people into your journey and see what God is going to do. He's faithful.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank y'all so much. Yeah, we've seen here at both hands that when you choose not to invite someone into your adoption fundraising journey, you are saying no for them. And that can be a missed opportunity for them to live out what God is calling them to do and to give and to tithe back and to live out James. We've had families that have worked with us where they end up getting anonymous $10,000 checks, $5,000 checks, where the donor doesn't even know the family. They just know someone that was on their team, and they just felt God's promptings to give, and we're looking for something to give towards, and then they get a letter in the mail or they see a post on social media. So God's going to do what he wants to do, and he's going to provide. Just being obedient, and as Rich said, and just putting the need out there, letting it be known. So a couple questions we've seen come in around both hands, just to confirm. So the family completes the project, so you are the project managers, and then our team is coaching you through all the steps. We walk you through the whole thing. We have a toolkit on our website that all families can log in and access that explains all the different steps. And then for supplies, majority of supplies through that supply grant we see covered. Usually the work being done on the widow's home, it's things that are very, very simple, but more of a honey-do list. They're not major home renovation projects. It's landscaping, cleaning, decluttering. It's the simple things that any volunteer can do that aren't very supply heavy, more labor intensive. Just like a serving Saturday that you would do with your church. So the goal is that if we can keep costs low, right, then that doesn't cut into the money that's being raised. So, all right. So as we wrap up here, things for today. Lastly, I just wanted to point out the adoption tax credit. That is a huge, huge piece that families have taken advantage of to help them cover their costs. For time today, and none of us, some of us, we know the general gist of adoption tax credit, but we are not Becky Wilmoth and Bill's Tax Service. They are the experts. So we're actually going to be doing a webinar next month with Becky, and she's going to walk through in detail just how the tax credit works, best practices, how to prepare for it, and then their firm actually takes care of working with families to apply for it, to take advantage of the credit. And they can also actually do a family's, like, all their taxes and complete and submit um, your your tax reporting for the year. So we're gonna do that next month. I'll send a link as we follow up here via email for you to sign up for the webinar. We'd love to have you attend that. There's just so much to cover that it would be a lot for us to cover here today. But I will just jump to the reason that the tax credit is so important to consider is that for 2026, the full amount of the adoption tax credit is $17,670. 5,000, a little over 5,000 of that is refundable. So that is a good chunk of change that the government is offering, and we don't want you to miss out on that. So please check out our webinar next month, and we'll go through that in more detail. And it'll be just like this, where you can ask Becky questions, and she'll be teaching me a thing or two. So, and with that, we are right at time here. So we had a few questions if we had some time, but I will just open it up to the panel. Do y'all have any final tips or words of encouragement here for all of our attendees as they leave our session for today?
Let's go get them.
Let's go get them. Love it. All right. Jonathan asked February 24th. Yes, Tuesday. Well, thank you all again for spending your lunch time with us, panel. Thank you all for joining us. We hope that you at least leave with one new tidbit that you didn't know before. And please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. I'll follow up with the slides here and that funding cheat sheet, or you can scan it there as well. And I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.